How's it going, everyone? It's Jeff Chrysler here, owner of Right Way Heritage Trimming and a detail enthusiast. And here we have our next project come in for a full interior. This is a relatively local car owned by our friend Lanny. He has had this car in his ownership for 50 years, and for all of that 50 years it has been off the road in various states of disrepair and restoration. So it's been a long time coming. Yeah, there was at one point I was going to do a lot of the assembly work on this car, and it was just going to be too much on top of the upholstery stuff. So I suggested our friend Trevor Parker be the guy to assemble it, because he's got lots of experience with these 100s. He's got a BN1 and a BN2 of his own, and was such a help on my car. So Trevor has taken this thing from the body shop as a chassis and built it up, and he's done a beautiful job. Yeah, going through all the boxes of parts that have been, coming together over the last 50 years, and new stuff mixed with old stuff, and organizing it all and trying to find all the right hardware and stuff. He's done a really good job on this. It's great work, Trev. It looks beautiful. Yeah, and then it went, as a running, rolling chassis, went back in for paint, and now the body's all finished, and went back to Trevor for all the chrome and finishings and grill and, windshield screen and all of that. So now it is here for the final step, a complete interior from us here. And I'll show you some of that. I was able to get just enough completely original, correct green Carvel carpet to do this car, so it'll be really accurate, one of the best out there. It's even the right shade of green, which is a first. I've never been able to find it before. So and then of course it's got the correct green vinyl and leather, and I'm doing the top and side screens. And actually, this car is really close to my own car. Like, they were only built a couple weeks apart. So this is like a early January, like January 6th or something like that, 54 car. Mine was built December 28th. And numbers-wise, they're only 60 or 70 numbers apart. So very close together, close relative of mine. So yeah, this is of course original color called spruce green that they've got bang on here. Of course, he's gone for the chrome wire wheels, which you could get as a dealer item at the time. So yeah, but all the details, including the same style of two-piece dash that my car has, it's all the same details and specifications as my own BN1. So really excited to get into this one. So of course, you've got the because it is this, it's the non-adjustable steering wheel. So you have adjustable seat tracks. So this is just after that change happened from adjustable steering with non-adjustable seat tracks to adjustable seat tracks with non-adjustable steering. And of course, the other side, the passenger side, stays non-adjustable. You've just got the wood rails there. So yeah, I'm going to get into this and take you through it step by step, how to install a Right Way interior, and let's get into it. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and show you what I have made and produced in preparation for doing this car's interior. So this is all kits that are available from me, Right Way Heritage Trimming. So for this early BN1, it's got all the early features, which I'll take you through as we trim this car. The first thing to go in any Healy project is tar paper that lined the main floor pans. It doesn't go up on the sides, it's just the main flat floors. So I'll be taking those seat tracks out of there first thing, and then putting in these, and they're just glued around the outside edge sort of thing, so they just float over top. And they were put in there by the factory as a bit of a moisture barrier to protect the floors. And for rain coming down, it's just an added bit of defense against rust from soggy carpets and whatnot. So yeah, they were put in, and here's, I've just got 2 oversized pieces that I'll be putting in, and then just cutting them neatly around where the tunnel goes along there. And really simple. You can see I've just temporarily set a piece of the green armacord in there. So that's the color of armacord that'll be all in the rear cockpit there. And then over here is, so this is, this is no longer available, although I make these kits in every other color. Green is the tricky one. I can get dark green wool carpet nowadays, and I can get a lighter grayer green German velour carpet. But green is one of those colors that a lot of carpet manufacturers don't do for some reason. But what we're looking at right here is some original 70-year-old Carvel carpet, which is what was used in these Healey's originally. And this is the original old stuff. We got an old roll, just enough to do what was needed for this car. So this guy, yeah, really lucked out that I was able to find this. So a couple of years ago, I did a 30s era MG L2, really rare car, and the owner of that had found this roll of original Carvel carpet over in England, and saved it. And then I used what was needed for his car, and I had just enough left in it to do a BN1. So there's the backstory of that. So as you can see, I've already trimmed his tunnel sections, the 1, 2, 3 pieces here. So he gave me his steel sections, and I can do this for anybody. It's just part of the order. If you want to send me your steel pieces, I can trim them correctly. So here's this back piece. And of course, over there is the 1/4-inch jute kit that I provide, although what you're seeing there is not complete because I've already used some pieces in here that are part of the kit. So there are pieces for the main floor mats, for example. There are pieces that go under the tunnel carpet here and here. So those pieces have already been used, as I say, to trim these sections. So there's the front bulkhead tunnel section, and it has that piece of rubber that's riveted to the back side, and then there's another piece of 1/4-inch insulation on the back there. Oh, sorry, that's heavy tar paper, and then there's 1/4-inch jute on the face of it. So that's how they were done originally. So there's that section. It'll be screwing in place in the car. I'm just gonna lean that up there. Here's the main tunnel section, obviously, where the gear shift comes out here, and that goes over the main gearbox, and you got your little, that's his original ashtray there. I gotta cut out some more. I've just temporarily pressed that in there. I gotta cut some of the carpet out so that functions properly. Yeah, and then you've got this middle section, and then this piece of carpet here. So that middle section covers just the drive shaft there, and of course the main tunnel up there, and that last piece of carpet is for covering this. So yeah, we'll be going about putting these pieces in, of course. So the order of operation here is tar paper first on the main floors, and then I'll glue in these jute sections into the toe board areas, the footwells. Those 2 pieces go above your feet and remain exposed. There's nothing to cover them. As original. And then these 2 back sections, that is the early style of pattern for early BN1s only, that goes on these rear wheel arches to cover the flat area, and it was just padding for the top frame so it doesn't pierce through the vinyl wheel arch covers. Gave it a little bit of cushion. So yeah, so we'll start by putting all of that stuff in. Okay, and here we have the rear bulkhead armacord set. Armacord, otherwise known as ribbed Hardura. It's the same product as Hardura, which was... Hardura is just a smooth version of this. You can see this is ribbed. Similar to what the Carvel carpet has, is a ribbing effect to the surface texture. So, whereas Hardura, and it's this thick jute underlay, it's all one piece. That's how it comes. So it's used for sound deadening, you know, usually in the rear cockpit over the axle, trunk areas were often lined in this stuff. So yeah, Armacord was what was used on Heelys, whereas the smooth version of this stuff, it doesn't have the ribbing effect, is called just straight Hardura, and that was commonly used in Jags. So yeah, this is the rear bulkhead, so you got the pair of under seat mats, and then this is the rear bulkhead section going up over the batteries. That's the battery lid that I've trimmed. He gave me his steel piece, so I was able to trim it with the piece, and it has the leather hold down straps that snap down. And of course this is that's the cutout for the spare wheel bag, which I'll show you next. Yeah, it's like a vinyl bag that covers the spare wheel, and yeah, that's that rear section. So all of this covers all of this here. You can see the spare wheel and where the batteries go. Usually it's a pair of twin 6-volt. Well, we've converted it to just a single 12 on this. Really easy, a lot of people do that. Of course those under seat mats just go here. And then over here we've got the boot kit. This is the complete Armacord for covering lining the interior of the trunk or boot. So this is the early BN1 style, so it's a narrower boot mat. Later cars had it come over to where these separate mats cover, so it would come over full width sort of thing. A little bit sewing, different style of sewing around the back here too. Of course, that's the cutout for the fuel filler neck. There is that spare wheel bag. It actually sews to this piece of Armacord that makes the bottom of that compartment for the spare wheel. So it's sewn to that, and then it comes around the other side and sticks out of here. Glues around the top and sides. So yeah, and of course you got your sidewall pieces, the wheel arch covers, all ready to go. So you can order from, like I say, Right Way Heritage Trimming. This is the complete boot set for an early BN1. They were always color-coded to the car on early 100s. Basically, all the Longbridge built Austin Heelys, the boot interior matched the cockpit interior colors. Whereas when they switched to Abington manufacturing in 58, they started doing all the boots in black only for the trunk. So, and I should also point out that this shade of green, it has been custom dyed. This is the correct shade of green. It's a lighter, more like emerald green that was used on Heeley 100s in the 50s. And what's available now is more of a darker gray green, similar to what you're seeing on the back of the vinyl there. Similar to that, a little grayer. So yeah, we've taken that and, like I say, custom dyed it all properly, professionally, so it's the right shade of green. You know, I kind of steered this customer that way because, like I say, we were fortunate enough to get some original Carvel, so to have the rest of the colors right felt like the right thing to do, so that this car will look really correct. Yeah, so glad to have all that done properly. So we'll get into installation next. Like I say, starting with the tar paper, then the jute, and then these carpet pieces that are actually glued in place, whereas some of them are not. So yeah, first thing is remove these seat tracks. Now, everyone always asks me what kind of glue I use. This is the stuff. It's made by DAP, Weldwood Contact Adhesive. It's spray grade, comes like this in the gallon cans. And I always just get a cheap, you can get them at Home Depot or wherever in the paint department. They sell these cheap plastic lids that just snap onto a paint can. And then you've got, a lid there with a vent. It makes it really easy and clean for pouring and filling up your jar on your spray gun. And then this is what I use for cleaning up overspray. It's always been, I've never met a paint that it attacked, as far as that goes. So it's really gentle on paint and whatnot, but you can clean off leather and wherever you have overspray. I usually, just use a clean rag and soak a little bit there and rub it into wherever you've got glue overspray, and it cleans it up very nicely without attacking things. So it's made by Proform General Purpose Contact, your adhesive cleaner. Good stuff. Okay, so there is the tar paper I've just put in place. Yeah, I've just cut around the edges. It comes up, it doesn't have to be perfect because all of the other things like carpet and Armacord are going to come down onto it with, you know, about an inch or inch and a half all the way around sort of thing down onto the tar paper. So there's no gaps, there's no visible body when it's all done. I've still got to cut that into the corner there, and then the carpet will come down onto the floor, like I say. Yeah, so that's nicely put into there, and I'm just going to show you cheap little glue spray gun. You can get this for about 50-70 bucks, something like that, from upholstery supply houses. There's lots of them online. Just Google you know, cheap spray gun, and yeah, and I buy my contact cement already diluted into its spray grade contact cement. Comes in gallon cans. Yeah, cheap little gun like this is kind of essential for installing an interior on a Healy, or any car for that matter, because you can do larger areas quickly, and you know, contact cement flashes off in under a minute sort of thing. So it's pretty fast acting, fast working cement. So you want a spray gun for, rather than trying to do it with a brush and areas are drying off too fast before you get to the end of it. So yeah, do yourself a favor, get yourself a cheap little spray gun like that. You'll be glad you did. And then I run that with a compressor. You have to have a decent sized compressor, obviously, but I run it at about 70 PSI usually, 70 to 80. And that should be sufficient. So now that I've got the tar paper in, I'm going to start getting into gluing in the front jute insulation pieces that go on the footwells, the toe boards I should say, and the inner bell housing area, and above your feet like I was showing you earlier. So we'll go about putting those in. Okay, and with all of these pieces, so these are the 3 pieces that go into the driver's side toe board area, footwell. So this is for the main flat area. The pedals come out of there. That's for cutout for the accelerator pedal, and that's a cutout for the sill. So black faces out every time, so I'm going to be gluing up the back side of these. This, of course, is for that face right there, the bell housing area around the gearbox, and this one here is for going above your feet. You can see the steering column bracket, that's a cutout for it right there, sort of thing. So yeah, and then that's a cutout for the vent that you'll see is above your feet. If I can see it, there it is, there's a little vent. So that's like a box section. You can see there's the other side's cut out for blowing on your feet, and there's like there's a vent, there's an air, oh, the parcel tray is not in yet, but once the parcel tray goes in, you'll see there's a choke cable you can pull that is for fresh air to blow on your feet, and there's like a tube in the front engine bay that feeds that. Anyway, so we'll go about gluing those 3 pieces in on both sides and show you how that looks. Okay, so here is the toe board jute installed. This is the driver's side, obviously. You got the one piece here which just comes up to that corner there, and then you got the top piece there that remains exposed, and then this side piece here, which, yep, it stops short so that the carpet can thin down there where the bell housing piece presses on there. So that is how it should be. And then the other side is just the same, just opposite, as you can see here. So there's those 3 installed there, and that's how she goes. So should lengthen that little bit right there. Yeah, I'm gonna cut a little piece to stick in there. That should come down, so I might have to adjust my pattern there. I've not had that before. That's interesting. Anyway, so we're gonna continue on. The next pieces to go in now will be the sill carpets, and they just glue directly to the sills here. just covering, you know, the top and sides and a little bit down onto the floor and a little bit up onto the thing just to fill the fillet. You can see it's kind of rounded, especially on the passenger side. So yeah, the carpet will come following the line of that jute there. Yeah, and it just covers the entire sill all the way to the back here. And like I say, a little bit of overlap onto all the other faces there. So we'll glue and install those. And usually for these sills, I should also mention, I like to use some heavy grit, like 36 grit, 40 grit sandpaper, just to scuff up the surface, because that's shiny paint there. Contact cement doesn't like to stick to shiny, non-porous surfaces as well. It can peel off, so if I scuff it up and give it some tooth, the glue will stick much better. So I do that to both sides before I glue up the carpet. You can see I got the sill carpet there ready to go. You can see they bell out on one side, and that bell out goes at the front. You can see it gets wider there as the toe board widens out at the end for your feet. Okay, and just like that, we have the first little bit of color glued into the car. We've got the passenger side sill carpet glued in. Like I say, it covers all those faces and you know, does a 90 down onto the floor a little bit, and then same thing with up in the toe board there, it goes up onto those areas. Now I usually, it's a little bit oversized, so there's always, you know, an inch or so to cut off on the back once you've got it nicely done. So I trim it off even so it's nice and clean, and then I'll use some scrap squares and put them in that open corner. So I got to put a little square piece in that little V area, or I should say a little V piece. I'll just cut it out and stick it in that spot so there's no exposed area. Now the next piece to go in over top of that sill carpet is the main toe board carpet, which I am one of the only manufacturers out there who does these correctly, like the factory used to do. Most people give you two separate pieces, one piece that does the main floor, the angled floor piece, and a separate piece that does the inner bell housing, so that you've got gaps. Originally they were done like this, and it actually folds 90 degrees right here, following that line down to that corner, and covers both faces with one piece of carpet. So that we'll be gluing in to there, covering this face and that face and wrapping around there. So, and it has a nice 90-degree cutout for the sill here that it falls onto. Yeah, so I always make mine a little bit oversized so that you can get that nice and tight. I've already put it in there, and I just had to cut it a little taller there, so I've already done that. And you just, you know, mark your chalk line what it needs to do and cut it with your scissors so you can get it nice and straight and clean and even following your chalk lines. So that's ready to glue in now. I'll flip it upside down, spray both surfaces. Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned, but that's how contact cement works. You've got to spray the glue evenly onto both surfaces, let it tack up for a few seconds, up to a minute, and then stick it together. And once it makes contact, it sticks like crazy, like glue. And yeah, and this stuff literally gets stronger with age. So yeah, we'll get that piece in there and show you what it looks like. Okay, and there is the passenger side toe board carpet glued in place. And it nicely cuts over the sill there, and a little bit of overlap everywhere, except for the top. It just goes right up into the top corner. It doesn't overlap onto the top. So that is how I've cut these. That's how I've patterned these. So when you go to offer it into the car, when it's all glued up, I always get that front inner corner, stick that, and then make this straight across into that top corner, stick that face with this piece pulled over, and then work it and pull it up to the top here and stick it all down. So just little tips for how to install that. Just follow the top edges as your starting points, and then work it down from there. So there you go. So now we can switch over to the other side. You can see I've already got it scuffed up there with some sandpaper, so it's ready to glue that carpet in. So we'll put the sill in first, just like the passenger side, and then do the toe board. And I'll show you the toe board. I have the cutouts for the pedals and the dip switch marked. I always draw them on the back side of the carpet so it's easy to cut them out. So makes it easier. So here you can see I've got the sill carpet ready to glue up on my overspray mat there, and then here's the driver's side toe board carpet, and I've already pre-marked. Those are the cutouts for the brake and clutch pedal. That's the cutout for the dip switch, and this is just a slice that you do to go around the throttle for the gas pedal, I should say. So that's ready to glue in those two pieces. So we'll get into that. Okay, and here we are with the driver's side. We've got the sill in and now the toe board with all the cutouts, and you can see that upper piece of jute insulation remains exposed as they did originally. It's just got a little bit of stuff on there, but yeah, looking good. There's like a slice there that goes so it can go around the throttle linkage, and if you ever need to access that, you can just lift that up, that flap up. Of course, you've got to take the pedals themselves off. I've just unbolted them there so they can go back on now. You just cut the little holes that I drew on the backside and feed them through. Same thing with the dip switch there. And same deal as the other side. I always line up this top edge first, get that done and into the corner, because there's a cutout in that corner. So get that top corner started and straight across here, and then just feed the rest of it down. It's tricky, you gotta sneak it in behind this throttle pedal to get all the material around into the right position. So I usually try to, with this side at least, with all of these obstructions in the way, I cut the holes, feed it in place, get it all lined up, and then I just pull down each section as a flap and glue it, and then stick that up, and then lift this part up and glue it and stick it down, and then pull this part away and glue it and stick it down. So it's easier to kind of put it in place first and just glue the areas, the bigger areas, as you can. So that's that. And so now the next step here with continuing with carpet, I've got that bell housing cover panel that goes on there that's got that rubber seal that seals around the gearbox itself. That can get put in place, and it has a series of 3 screws either side, 6 screws in total, that hold it in place. So once that's in place, then the main tunnel can go in, then the rear section, we can cover this piece as well with its piece of carpet. So we'll do that. Okay, and there we are. We've got the pedals reinstalled, and we've now screwed in the front bulkhead panel. And it's just, like I say, 3 screws either side. Those are like 1.25 inch long screws with the same number 6 diameter, and with the cup washers, the same as you use for all the panels on Heelys. So yeah, that's installed. Just got my spotlight hanging there. And of course, that cable that you see there, that's that fresh air cable that I was talking about. So once we, one of the next steps here, I'm gonna clean up the glue there with my adhesive remover and install the parcel tray, which I've already got ready to go. And then this cable we're gonna have to feed the cable through there a little bit to take some of the excess, but it screws with nuts and screws to the bottom front edge of the parcel tray like this, so that it's accessible. So yeah, once we get the parcel tray, you can see its screws going along here. And actually I'll have to loosen off these screws because it tucks in just behind and sits over top of that, following that line. So yeah, we'll put the parcel tray in next. And then we can, and also we can set in the main tunnel sections. And as you can see, I got a little ahead of myself. I've now installed this piece of carpet, which again, I scuffed up the steel. It's just carpet glued to the metal there for that rear tunnel section. And it comes with the cutout already for the for going around the handbrake. That's how they were done in these early BN1s. Yeah, I should be noted that, so BN1s has the three, like 1, 2, 3 removable sections, and then the stationary rear section, and they're all carpeted on a BN1. Whereas on a BN2, you've only got 2 sections, the front section, which is a little slightly different shape than the BN1, and then the main tunnel body is totally different because it's a 4-speed gearbox. The gear shift is in a different location, and it comes all the way back to here. There's not a separate piece for covering the drive shaft. So BN2s are different. And on a BN2, yeah, the tunnel is all carpet, but this rear section on a BN2 is armorcord to match the rest of the rear armorcord. So it's like they were slowly improving these every year or two, tightening things up and changing standards. So these early BN1s are kind of the first inception, so kind of neat. So yeah, I'm going to set those tunnel section pieces in place just to see how they look, and then go about putting in the parcel tray next. Okay, and there we have the parcel tray now installed. I had pre-trimmed the parcel tray earlier, and there you can see this row of screws. You can also see, look at those speaker holes that somebody drilled at some point in this car's life. Again, owner decided not to fill in any of that stuff because it's part of the car's history, so we've left those. You only see if you get down on your hands and knees under the dash here, but yeah, pretty neat stuff. So yeah, hopefully you don't rub your knees against that because you'll cheese grate them. But there's that fresh air cable with its bracket mounted to the bottom of the parcel tray, so that's properly routed now, and I carried the excess through and readjusted it on the fresh air hose there, so it's operating the valve properly. And now, as you can see, I've got these tunnel sections mounted, which again, I had pre-trimmed these before. So front panel is mounted with the 3 screws like I showed you, and the carpet on that, so that front panel has a jute underfelt glued to the steel underneath of the carpet, and then the carpet glued to it, and the carpet is wrapped around the edges completely, about 2 inches all the way around, sort of thing, wrapped around the backside, and that creates a good seal there where it meets the bulkhead. Okay, and then the main tunnel section, as I pan out here with my light, yeah, it just screws to the floor. So I've got those screws screwed into the floor there, and then here's the rear drive shaft section, again screwed down through the floor. And yeah, oh, and you can see I already glued that piece in. So that is basically all the carpet except for the main floor mats, which I'll leave those out until I get finished with all the rear here, because I don't want to be stepping all over them. Yeah, so just to show you everything here, here's what it looks like on the driver's side. Beautiful. Love that. Love that original Carvel carpet with the proper vinide. It's really giving it the proper look. That's what they look like on green interiored cars. So now we're turning our focus. Now that's basically, like I say, that's all the carpet except for the main front mats, which I'll do towards the end. So now we're going to turn our focus to the rear cockpit armorcord. First thing to go in though is the vinyl wheel arch covers, because all the armorcord and panels overlap those wheel arches around the edges. So first thing under the wheel arches is these pieces of jute. I've got the one installed, the other one's ready to go in there, but you can see how it goes in. There's like a cutout there, so it goes along the line of that cutout, and that is this pad is for the top frame to rest on when it's in its lowered position. So because the top frame's resting on the wheel arch there, you don't want to pierce through the vinyl, so they put in this jute pad underneath of it to pad it out. Now on early BN1s like this, that is the shape of the pad. It covers much of the wheel arch, and then the vinyl just kind of floats off the edges of it to the outer flange all the way around. You can see that flange is raised. So you don't want to define the edges of that flange or the edges of the jute pad. You want to float the vinyl over that area so it looks nice and smooth when it's all done. You can't see these distinctive edges. That was the intention, so that's what we're going to be aiming for. So Later cars, after early BN1s, they changed that pad so that it's just the D shape. It just fills that flat area and none of the curved areas. So, so yeah, I produced the right ones for depending on what era your car is. I give you the right one. So yeah, gluing those in, and then we'll be doing the vinyl wheel arch covers next. I'll show you that. Okay, and there is the wheel arch cover installed. So you can see I've really tried to not define the edges of the jute pad or the edges of the steel flange around. I'm just kind of floating it out as best I can and keeping that piping nice and straight. So what I do to install these, I'll show you on this one, is I'll take the wheel arch cover. You get a pair of sewn wheel arch covers just like this, and open it up, and I sort of offer it in place, and you'll see that V cut out there. You want that landing in the bottom corner, so you've got kind of equal, you can see that there in the bottom corner where this is, if you drew a straight line down. So that's where you want it, and then get it like that, and then I'll flip this inside out. So with it flipped inside out, with the piping facing the outside of the car like this, I just make some chalk lines so that I know where to start it. I'll start it here and pull it up to the top and pull it down, pulling tension into that piping so that there's no wrinkles going across there. And once you get that established, like I say, I'm only gonna glue like this area on the other side, of course. I'm only gonna glue that like about 1.5 inch strip along that piping, and then around the outside edges, you know, like that, all the way around. And I'm only gonna glue the outside edges here, just down into the corner. I don't wanna spread a bunch of glue in here, in between the flange and the jute. So that area I wanna leave unglued. Just glue it down into the corner and onto here. And of course the jute itself can be glued. But again, I got a bit of overspray there, but I'm gonna kind of go over that with a bit of sandpaper and make sure I do get good glue on the flange and into the corner. So we'll glue it up, like I say, stretch it up there, stretch it down there, and then work it down into the corner here. And then we'll be leaving it like that. And I'll show you once it's glued. Once I've got this part of half of it glued, then I'll glue the second half. I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so you can see I've followed my chalk line here. I've got that nicely stretched and glued, and it's glued all around the edges there. Got it nicely floated. So now I flip it inside out and I'll glue the vinyl again, just like the outer 2 inches or so. And I've already glued that, so yeah, just got to glue that and then stretch it over, and yeah, like I say, work my way up and out, pulling the wrinkles out either way. Okay, and there we go. The wheel arch is now fully glued in place. Just worked it into the corners all the way around. This bottom edge was a little bit lumpy with welds and stuff like that, but the armacord should come and cover that nicely. It's a nice tight fit there, so that should not show when the armacord goes in. But yeah, that gets it nice and straight and tight, stretching out that piping and gluing that first and working it out from there. So next piece is, we're gonna get into some of the armacord like I was saying. So the first piece of armacord is this lower bulkhead section that covers that face and these faces. It goes all the way along here. Of course, there's a cutout for the battery box. It just wraps around the edges there. So the way I like to do this is to, offer it in place dry, and then, once it's all centered and exactly where it's gonna go, I put a couple just like hand clamps like this to hold it in place over the battery. And then I'll flip half of it, flip it in half one side, and do spray and glue one side at a time sort of thing, keeping the other side clamped in place so it can't move. So we'll do that, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I've got this piece offered in here. I've got it nice and centered side to side. I've put a clamp here on this side just to hold it. And I've made a chalk line there so that when I pull it over, I can line it up top to bottom. And yeah, so now I'm just gonna take this and flip it inside out like that. I can spray glue the whole thing, just using pieces of cardboard so I don't get overspray everywhere. And then spray glue the steel, obviously. And I can scuff up the paint there like I did before with a bit of sandpaper. Yeah, and we'll just glue it half at a time, like I say, and stick it using my lineup marks, and then do the same thing to the other side. Okay, and there we go. There's the first piece of armacord glued into the car. Mind the weird shadows that are happening from the windscreen here, but it's yeah, really like the color contrast of the greens. It's gonna really stand out, look it bright. So yeah, the next piece to go in now is the spare wheel bag, because it's gonna glue around this perimeter and glue down there, and it's actually sewn to a piece of armacord that fills in that bottom it makes the floor of the wheel box there, so it's accessible from in the trunk sort of thing. So we'll be gluing in that lower piece of armacord and gluing the wheel bag in place around that perimeter. And like I say, it's got flaps that glue along the inside there, and is sewn along the bottom strip. So we'll get that in place, and then once the spare wheel bag is in place, then the final piece of armacord can go in that covers this whole back wall and covers over its glued flaps that are going to glue to the steel there. And that'll complete that area. And then it's just the rear quarter panels, which are a wooden vinyl covered panel that go in after. So we'll get that spare wheel bag in next, and we'll show you how that looks. Okay, now for installing this spare wheel bag, you can see I've got it here, and it's sewn to this piece of armacord that makes the floor of the wheel box. A little bit of piping there. So I've put it in place, and what I do is I make sure that the back edge of it, of that piece of armacord, is even, perfectly even with where it drops down for the rear bulkhead there. So I've lined it up, and I can feel with my fingers it's right on that line. And I'm actually using the spare tire there to hold it in position so that it can't move. And it's nicely centered here and side to side. So now I've pulled it forward, and I'll push the actual wheel bag out of the way. And because it's armacord, we want to butt join it perfectly to this piece of armacord. So you can see I've cut away this armacord. There was just like half an inch or so that I needed to cut away to make it nice and even, so it'll be a nice smooth. So now I'm gonna spray glue just like, you know, a 3-inch section here, glue that down nice and even, and then once that's glued in, now I can pull this around, and you can see it's got this tab that's sewn here. That entire tab is going to be glue right up to the stitch line. So I'll glue the tabs all the way around on the side as well, glue the entire tab, and then glue all of this, you know, this face as well as this face. So those two tabs will glue on here with the piping going right into the corner there and into the corner here. And you can see there's 3 holes going along here. Those 3 holes are for some little, they call them cock and hen rivets, or speedy rivets is another name for them. And they're a 2-piece rivet that you get an anvil under one end of it and hammer down the other end of it, squish them together sort of thing. So there's 3 of those. They're originally black, that go through here, through the center, in between those stitches that hold this in place along with the glue. So once we get it all glued in position, then I'll find those holes from underneath and then poke them through and put the rivets in. So that's how you do that. Okay, so coming back to our rear bulkhead kit, the last pieces to go in is this rear piece that goes, that's the cutout for that spare wheel bag. So we now have the spare wheel bag glued in place, as you can see. Of course, the spare wheel is not in it yet, and I've still got to do the 3 rivets across the top of it. but it's all glued in place now and ready to receive the Armacord to finish that off. And as well as the door, which the door is just, the hinges are just underneath that flap. So I'm gonna lift those flaps, offer up the hinges, screw them in place, and then I'll have to make little cuts on either side of the hinges and tuck the Armacord under the door, and then it just closes down. And then I'm gonna have to remove the battery because I've got to access the holes from the backside. I'll poke them through the Armacord for the two lift the dot studs that are going to be on this side for the for those snaps there that are on these straps. So when you close the door, you've got those straps that hold it down. So the studs for those are going to be in there. So lots to do. I'm going to, like I say, I like to glue this whole piece up in one go. So I'll glue it all up, including its upper flap. That upper vinyl flap is going to glue along the top here and go up. It's going to glue right up to the top edge of the body there, and then when the cockpit rail goes in, it covers over that flap and holds it. So so I'm going to mask off the bodywork here just so I don't get any overspray on the paintwork, and then put that piece of Armacord in with its flap and cutting off the flap even with that top corner. One more thing that I have noticed here, yeah, I think it was the body guys who did the fender beading, and great job. Everybody did a beautiful work and everything like that, but little details. This fender beading should actually start, back here somewhere, because it doesn't go under the cockpit rail. It actually just comes up to it, and you want that nice finished edge to be right where the cockpit rail is. I actually had to replace one of the fender beadings on my own car because I didn't have it in the right spot, and I had cut it, and that cut edge just looked terrible, against the cockpit rail there. So I ended up replacing mine this winter. But yeah, I'm all too aware of where these got to come. So you've got to literally fit the cockpit rail in and mark exactly where it comes to on the body so that you can start that fender beading right there and carry it on back. So yeah, these are gonna possibly be a big problem. I might have to get new ones in, and yeah. Anyway, we'll get these pieces of Armacord. It doesn't affect that at all. So we'll get the rest of the interior pieces in now and go from there. Okay, so just showing you, I've masked off where the Armacord is going to glue in place there. So we're now ready to spray the glue on both the Armacord and the body there. Okay, and there we have it. We've got that rear Armacord installed now. You can see I've trimmed off the edge of the vinyl, even with the upper part of the body there. And yeah, that's how it lays in there. It goes deep into those corners there. It kind of, there's a bit of an overhang just in those back corners. It's much less going along here and out to the sides, but in those corners you got to make sure you get it into those corners, because that's how it's supposed to fit. And you'll find that the Armacord fits perfectly along the bottom edge of that where the cockpit rail goes. So yeah, and now I've got the battery lid door installed. Like I say, I just had to lift the material, find the holes for the hinges, and make little cuts in to go around the hinges. And then yeah, so the majority of it tucks underneath, and then there's those little cuts, and it just kind of covers the hinge nice and neat like that, and it's glued around the edge the rest of the way into the trough. And I've located and installed the studs there for those straps, so that's all good to go. So now this can be pulled out. So yeah, for any owners, obviously, it's if you want to access the batteries, it's a case of opening the trunk, undoing the belt strap, and getting the spare wheel out of your way so that you can tuck that back in there and open the door. So yeah, lots of fun. But that is the Armacord and carpet, at least the glued parts that go in the cockpit. So now I'm just gonna set in place the floor pieces so you can see what that looks like all together. And then the next step for the cockpit at least will be installing all of the panels. So you got rear quarter panels here. There's the doors, which are some pieces of glued vinyl to the door, as well as some panels that go in, along with some draft seal. And then there's kick panels up in the front too that go in with some draft seal. So we'll get into those next. Okay, now another interesting detail that I want to point out that I'm now going to be offering and producing is these strips of wood. This was the original one found in this car that goes in the bottom of the door, and it's a tack strip basically. It fills underneath the lip of this, and what it's for is so that when you install, just lost the check. Yeah, it just goes in there like that. And when you, after the inner door is all trimmed in vinyl, the vinyl will come up and overlap onto this to help hide it. And there's enough of a tail there. So it covers over this. So vinyl glues to this as well as the bottom. And then when you offer the main door panel on, which has screws, this is to, catch the screws. The screws will pull that in tight, and it'll prevent, when you reach in the door pocket, you're not going to be hitting sharp screws. You've got this piece of wood here to protect your fingers. It also has the vinyl, like I say, covering over it. So these were in here, and I believe they may have had 1/4-inch jute on them too, because there is evidence that there was jute on this one, on the outside of this one, sorry. I can't get my hands on it now, but there is trace evidence that jute was glued to it. So yeah, learning new details all the time. So yeah, those would have been in there, and makes a lot of sense for them to be there because yeah, you don't want to be cutting your fingers on the screws that are coming through that steel membrane in the bottom of the door pocket. Okay, and there we are with the main floor mat set in place. I still have yet to add the snaps to them. There's 4 snaps each front mat, and these rear mats each get just a single snap that goes just in the front inner corner there, both under seat mats. But yeah, so the main floor mats always stay removable. They're just snapped in place. And of course the front ones have 1/4-inch jute mats under them too that are sandwiched underneath of the carpet. But there you go. So there is all the floor coverings for the main cockpit. So now I'm going to continue on to trimming the boot. You can see I've got all the pieces ready to go in order of installation. So we'll be getting into this now. And yeah, there is that piece that I used for I did the spare wheel bag. So you can see that flap is going to glue to the wheel arch there, and then the armacord will overlap it. And then actually there's holes underneath of that vinyl that you can't see. The spare wheel block, that triangular shaped block, it screws on through all the layers of material there and holds it all in place. So yeah, now that this is lined up with this edge, like I say, I can pull this down and glue it to the steel here all the way along. And then there's corresponding armor cord to cover it. So we're gonna get into trimming this boot now. I'm gonna get some better lighting for you. And yeah, the first pieces to go in here, of course, I'm gonna glue that flap down. But then once the flap is in, the first pieces to go in here are the wheel arches on either side, as well as this piece, which is this piece that unfolds. So it does both faces there, wraps around. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, get those in place, as well as that flap, and then show you the next pieces. Okay, so here we go. We've got those 3 pieces in, the wheel arches, 1, 2, and then these the partition wall here. And now I've also put in that back wall. It's just a simple stick it to the back there once the wheel arch is in, and it has binding to finish that against the wheel arch. And then the floor piece, I don't even glue that floor piece. I just set it in there because it's got a cutout for that battery switch that you can see in there. And then I've got a little tag with a string that attaches to that switch that it's like a warning about the switch. Yeah, so that finishes those areas. So now the next piece is the main rear bulkhead piece. So it has cutouts for the fuel line and for that wire going through. We've also got to locate those two holes. That's for that footman's loop that the hold down strap attaches to for the wheel, spare wheel. So yeah, we'll get that located and glued in. It's got a flap that goes along the top there, similar to this, and it's bound in either side. So you center it, and it goes in behind the gas tank there, and it has little cuts for either side of those straps. Yeah, so we'll get that located, get the holes punched through, and get it glued in place. And I'll just show you the piece here. Okay, so here's the piece. You can barely see it, but there's the one, and in the lighting, there's the other one. You can see up there for the fuel line and for that wire going through, and then these are the cuts. I've just marked them in a white pencil, very lightly, and yeah, and then this is that flap that is gonna glue up like that. Yeah. Okay, so that's how that finishes. Okay, and there's that rear bulkhead piece in. You can see it does get pressed into the panel pressings as original, so that's all correct. So now the last pieces to go in is these side walls on both sides, and then these side floor sections. So there's the side wall and there's the side floor section. So for both sides. So we'll glue those up and put them in, and you can see the bound edge there is going to nicely go into the corner of that to cover it. Same thing with along the bottom. It's all a nice neat bound edge there that finishes up alongside the others. So we'll get those glued in place and show you what that looks like. Okay, and there's those side pieces in, and you can see the floor pieces just nicely overlap everything like so, glued down into those faces, and yeah, so that's how she looks. So now the last piece to be glued in is this piece that goes in along the back here. That's this one, and you want the binding to go along the top edge of it, and of course it overlaps those side pieces, and you can see there's cutouts here for going around that center frame rail and for the gas tank straps along the bottom. So that piece can glue in, and then last but not least is the main boot mat that lays in place. There's no glue because you want to be able to lift it out in case you need to access the gas tank for anything. Okay, so there's the finished boot, and I've located and installed the footman's loop there. I just need to add the leather strap, which I've still got to make. I've got that other little bracket, it just hooks into the underside of the hub there and bends over the tire, and then the leather strap will be going between it and the footman's loop, and you can just tighten it up. As you can see, I've got a bit of clear plastic. I just wrapped a clear plastic bag around the end of the tire. These new Blockley tires are a little too big, so you've got to deflate them just to get it into the tire hole, and even then I couldn't get it through. It was just too much friction with the rubber against the armor cord and that, so put a piece of clear plastic bag around the end of the tire, and that made it nice and slippery, so it was easy to get there, and it's preventing it from scuffing up the armor cord there on the bottom too. So just protects everything and makes it a lot easier to get in and out. Yeah, and I mean, I can lift the wheel a bit and tuck that under there to get it out of sight if we need to. But yeah, little tips for, that's a common problem I think with these cars and modern tires. But yeah, there is the finished boot, so very happy with that. That's the proper green for this armor cord. So that's it for the boot interior, with the exception of that leather strap, and the cockpit is all armor cord and carpet. It's nice seeing that spare wheel bag filled out. I can work the vinyl around the tire a little better to get the wrinkles out, but yeah, that's just how they go. So next steps I'm going to do is to finish off all of the carpet by installing the floor snaps. I've got to put the male parts in the new floors there. Nothing's been drilled in these new floors. So there's 4 snaps each front mat, and then these rear mats just get a pair of snaps on the inner center, just like right there and right there. So that's all them. And then once those are in, that'll complete the mats. Oh, and I'm gonna have to lift out this tunnel section and install the studs, the 4 10X studs for the 10X snaps for installing the center armrest, which goes right over this whole area. Okay, so next steps are going to be trimming the doors. I'm going to get into doing all the panels, and I'm going to start with the doors. So the first piece to go in the doors is, and of course I've made sure we've got the wood strips. These are his original ones there. I showed you putting in those lower ones, so that's in there already, tucked out of sight. Yeah, and that's his original middle section, or the waistline door that the upper panel screws into. But the lower part of the panel, you got to make sure, especially well, BN1s and BN2s, that this area is nice and smooth, because the vinyl is actually supposed to glue right to the inner face of the door skin there. Come on, focus. So yeah, if there's any lumps and bumps there, it's going to show through the vinyl. So you want that nice and smooth from the body shop. So this is the big piece of vinyl that's going to be gluing in there. I usually line up that top edge with the top edge of that wood strip, and then just go down and into the corner with it, get that nice and tight and even into the corner, and then just, yeah, glue it everywhere. You've got a flap that comes up the bottom onto that inner tack strip in both the front and back. Just swing around, and that's what they did. They just kind of lightly tacked it in place back there, so it covers any visible paint. And then once that's in there, you've also got this upper strip that covers that whole area up underneath of the cockpit rail, and it'll trim into the slot here for the door latch. So you got to cut a bunch of little cuts into the corners so that you can wrap it around in behind there. So that's what that strip of vinyl is for. And then of course, here's your upper inner panel that screws. You got to wedge it up into the door. That's why it's kind of bent there. That's his original panel that we're reusing. Normally when I supply a panel kit, I give you a new one of those panels already covered, ready to go. But with this guy's car, we wanted to reuse his original just because it was in such good shape. So of course I've recovered it in new vinyl, but it's the original bitumen panel. So yeah, it wedges up into the top of the door there, and the bottom of the edge of it is even with the bottom edge of this. So it gives you a nice transition. So those 3 pieces go in, and then once all that's done, then the main door panel can go on with screws. Okay, so there we've got the upper piece of vinyl installed, and you can see I've just trimmed it sort of midway underneath the cockpit rail there. I don't want to take it right to the top edge just for moisture. I don't want moisture to start creeping under the vinyl in rain and stuff like that. So and when we put the cockpit rail on, I usually do it with a little bit of silicone or dum-dum just to seal it so that water can't creep under it. And yeah, there is the lower inner door skin vinyl cover. You can see it's just flapped on the front, and around the bottom it comes up onto the inner tack strip there, and same thing at the back, and it nicely does this profile here. Yeah, and of course to get it centered front to back so you've got enough coverage and it's not too much on one end, I always just hold it in place by hand, make sure it's gonna go right, and then I just draw some chalk lines to line it up. So then once it's lined up, then I spray the glue, and then I can stick it. So pretty simple. So now to finish this off, I can install the door cord, which goes from this part of the latch, which I've still got to screw in the latch handle there, into there. So this just screws into here, and the door cord screws onto the back side of it. It goes onto the back side of it with a nut. So the door cord goes from here to the front here. You can see that hole. So there's like a countersunk screw and nut that holds it on that end. So we can put the door cord in and the upper panel in. It's easier to do the door cord without the upper panel in, just because it's really tight quarters back here trying to get that nut on. So once that door cord is in, then I'll shove the upper panel in and put it in. It's just got 3 screws going along. I can probably reuse the original screw holes in the panel for sure. And then I'll go about putting the main panel on. Okay, so coming right along here, I've got the door cord attached with the nut on the inside there, and as I was showing you before, it's got a flathead screw with a nut on the back side at the front there. And now I'm offering up the main door panel. I didn't include a shot of the complete panels kit because in many cases, on this car at least, I've already used some of the pieces of vinyl that are included to trim some of the pieces. But I'll go about telling you now, like when you order a panels kit from me, Right Way Heritage Trimming, you get a complete set of new fully trimmed panels, fully trimmed in the proper vinyl. In the case of the 100s, they have the proper Furflex draft seal already installed. Plus you get another couple strips for installing along the front kick panel there. So here's, for example, these are just, because I'll be installing them next. Here's the front kick panels. You get a new fully trimmed board in 1/8 inch birch plywood, as they were originally, and they fit nicely. And then you also get a set of rear quarter panels. So those go in the back there to fill in that area, and they already have the holes in the back side. Even the screw mounting holes, although you can either follow those or try to reuse the ones in your car. They should match up, but in some cases they don't. So what I'm doing right now, I've clamped the main door panel in place, and now I'm just going along and marking where the holes are. I'm using all of the original holes on, sorry for the shakiness, I'm using all of the original holes on this. So I've got a tool that I made years ago out of some Meccano. You can find these tools, I believe Moss Motors now sells them. I don't know if they found the idea through some of my videos, but regardless, you can make one or purchase one, and all you do is, go like this with the panel and put that end into your original screw hole on the steel, and then just mark it on the other side like that. So yeah, I just go along with it clamped in place, and once you get a few screws started, you can remove the clamps and go along and find the rest of the screw holes, and it works like a charm. Now, the door panels here are nicely padded, as they should be, with some really thin foam. Whereas the kick panels and rear quarter panels, and even these upper inner panels, those are included with the panel set. I'll take you through the panel set. It includes all of the fully trimmed panels required, so including those ones. It also includes all of the vinyl covers required. So the big lower vinyl cover, you get covers for your door cords, you get these upper vinyl covers, you get all of the vinyl covers needed to trim the tunnel, you get the vinyl cover for trimming your parcel tray, for trimming the spare wheel block in the back, of course the spare wheel bag, the wheel arch covers sewn and ready to go. Those are all included in the main panel kit. It's basically all the vinyl that's needed to trim the car. So that's all included with a Right Way Heritage Trimming panel kit. And like I say, we're just going along and installing these door panels. Also included with a panel kit is I give you a full set of the proper little cup washers and 5/8 long oval head Phillips countersunk screws. nickel plated, as they should be. You get a full set of those for installing all of your panels with every panel set, just like you get a full set of carpet snaps with every carpet set. So all comes with, so you've got everything you need to trim the car. Okay, so coming along with the passenger door, I've just put in the door cord, and I just want to point out on this door panel, you can see that hole cut out for the door handle is a lot taller or than the other side, or than I've ever seen before. They've cut that out deliberately. And the reason for that is they've cut it lower because that is where this latch mechanism is falling. It's quite a bit lower than others. And when I went to fit up the door panel, I can't get it to go all the way to the top because it's bottoming out on that. So I'm having to modify the door panel to suit. This happens sometimes with certain cars. You know, I've checked this. The latch is where it's supposed to go. It closes properly. You know, there's not much I can do. I'm not gonna try and change any, you know, the geometry of the doors or try to move the whole latch assembly up. I'm not gonna make new cuts here. That is centered and everything. So that's just where it's falling on this car. Might be the lever is too short, I don't know, but it's been deliberately cut that way to fit. So I'm having to, as you can see over here, I've undone the vinyl around here, lifted all the staples, pulled the fur flex away, and I've cut this just on my bandsaw lower. You can see I drew a line on the outside. That's what I've basically done. So now I've got to cut the vinyl into the new corners, bottom corners, and then trim it in with fresh glue and staples and put the fur flex back on. So little details like that sometimes you've got to do to modify panels, because every car has its own quirks. Might be little differences here and there. So you just got to adjust accordingly, and it's not that big of a deal to do so. Certainly not in this case. So yeah, okay, see, the other door panel fit perfectly straight from the box sort of thing. It all lined up properly, but this one's been a custom adjustment that we're having to make. Okay, and there we are with the finished door panel. So they come with that Furflex weather seal already installed on the back side and ready to mount in the car. So now I've marked in the center here, you can see I've marked these two holes. Only one of them, and I believe it's the rear one, is going to be used for, there's a 10X snap there for securing the side screen. The other one is a hole that I found in the body, but may or may not be getting used again. I've seen some cars have the 10X and a screw there, and other cars just have the 10X. My car had just the 10X originally, so yeah, so I think I'm gonna do just the 10X on this car rather than adding a secondary screw, which is a bit redundant. Same thing, the other side is now installed, so we're moving right along here. And now I've also installed the front kick panels. You can see over there. Yeah, there you go. And the front kick panels, they come with a separate piece of Furflex as well. You can see the one on this side. That is his original car number tag. Get the lighting sorted out here. Yeah, that is his original car number tag. The kick panel's installed there. So the Furflex just glues to the scuttle edge along, and then the kick panel covers over top of it to sandwich it in there. So yeah, I glue it up here, and then I make a little cut there so it can go around the dashboard, and then it comes around to this side of the dash and gets pinched underneath of the windscreen post here. So you got to loosen these off and cut little fingers so it can go around the bolts there, and squish it in there and then tighten it all up to help hold it. And I'm gonna have to loosen it off a little bit here to get a better, smoother transition there, but because it should look pretty straight. But that's an easy adjustment. Yeah, the other side came out really good, really straight. So yeah, sorry, you gotta get my light in here every time. But yeah, so the kick panels are installed, and door panels are now installed. And now, all I have left to do is, the next step is going to be, before I put those rear quarter panels on, they're the last of the panels to go on. Those rear quarter panels, they overlap the aluminum door trims. So the next step here is to get those aluminum door trims on. So you can see I've got them ready here. I'm going to be cutting and putting the holes in the new ones and installing those. Yeah, but once those door trims go on, then the quarter panels can go on overlapping them. And then that'll be it for the panels. So here I just wanted to show you some of the other stuff, hardware and that I'm going to be installing, as well as the interior. These are kind of extras. So we've got, these are his original aluminum door trims, and here's the new ones that you can get from KAS, Kilmartin, out of Australia. I should say Kilmartins are the only ones that offer these without the holes already made. And for these early BN1s, they have a smaller, narrower door latch assembly than all the later cars from 54 on, when they changed that. So you've got to get these ones from Kilmartin. They're the only ones that'll work to get the hole the right size. I made that mistake on my own car. I bought some from some of the other sources, and they came with the holes already there, but the holes were too big, so you could see the hole around the latch sticking out either side. So I had to replace mine last year before getting it judged. Yeah, so those are pretty easy. You just, lay them on top very carefully, get them all lined up, and then carefully draw. Somebody's already kind of drawn a line there, but I'll make new ones. Draw the line and cut it out exactly, and of course I'll fit all this stuff up beforehand. And of course here we've got the lower sill plate covers. There's his originals again. We can fit them up first, fit the original, make sure it's going right, and then use that as a template if I need to. They're pretty close already anyway, so. And then of course here are his original cockpit rails. He gave these to me, many months ago, and took them in, had them cleaned and polished to a mirror shine at our local plating company here. And then once they were like a mirror shine, they're supposed to be anodized originally, so I took them over to the mainland, and we've got a place called Alltech Anodizing, which is in Delta, BC. So yeah, it's a big trip. I take the ferry over and everything like that, but got these dropped off and anodized properly, and that gives you that nice kind of matte anodized finish. Now, one thing I will point out, if you notice on these door ones, the ends there, and this one especially, that is because in this car's life, it was raced, I guess, and hit in the front and in the rear in its life, and these door gaps, at some point they tried to straighten the car out, and these no longer worked because the door gaps had closed so much, so they cut them, both of them, this one more so than the other one, and that's how they were living in the car. And when they went through the full restoration project of the car, now these were too short. The doors were full length and these were too short, so they've had to add new material there to bring them out to the right length. But otherwise, like, these are the original ones to the car. They've just gone through all these modifications over the years, but it's part of the car's story. And when these came back, I thought we could take these to get them like powder coated to look like anodized aluminum. Potentially, I've seen people do that before, but no, the owner was like, no, you know what, that's a part of the car's history, and I agree. Like, it's otherwise beautiful anodizing, and that is just a little telltale of what this car has been through, and it's 70 plus years of existence. So yeah, and of course here is a lot of extra hardware. This is the original spare tire block, which he had its original vinyl cover with it, so I've just retrimmed that on there. I like to do that. I did that on my own car as well. These are tucked way in the back with the spare wheel against it, so you never see it, but it's nice to have a little piece of the original trim left in the car. So that's the vinyl cover that I had cut for it originally, but seeing as he had his original, we decided to go with that there, just for that one piece. These are the wood blocks that go in the tops of the doors inside, and they are for receiving these eyelets, which he's got a full new set and a couple originals. So these are the eyelets that the side screens peg into that are in the tops of the doors. So presumably the other two wood blocks are already in the door, whereas these ones still need to be installed. This is his top brackets, top latch brackets. So those all need to be assembled, and the nuts and hardware are in there for putting them all together. And there's the little triangular little stop. There's 3 of those going along the inside of the top header rail. So that's all for his top installation. And of course, these are screws that I am supplying, for screws and nuts for installing these to the top frame. And what do we got here? This is for the spare wheel. This is the leather strap that holds it down, goes through this eyelet, and then this hooks into the hub through the spokes. And this is the other end of the leather strap, has this footman's loop, and here's the little bracket that goes on the other side of the bulkhead there, beside where the rear axle is inside. These are some new turn snaps, or the actual technical term for these is called common sense fasteners. And then he's got a pair of original 10X in there that are kind of rusty. So he's given me that. I have a whole thing of original 10X that have been replated, nickel plated, with the nuts ready to go. So I'm probably going to use some of these because he doesn't have enough. There's some in the front and some in the rear. I noticed the ones in the rear, somebody has put they put lift the dot studs instead of the proper 10X. So I'm going to have to replace those to get that right. Yes, common mistakes. These are for installing his top frame, so he's got new hardware there. These are the 2 original pieces that he had left, so for getting the new ones. But again, there's no nuts to go with those, so I'm going to have to get some nuts. These are the screw hardware for installing those aluminum trims. And this is a bag that I'm supplying all these bags here, of all of the 10X and fasteners for installing the top, tonneau cover, armrest, and side screens. All use these hardware, and that's an installation tool. That's ready to go. So yeah, just getting stuff arranged and ready to go, and bringing it down to the car as needed. And yeah, so we'll continue on. And now we've also got the armrest installed. I was able to get those 10X snaps in there, so that's looking really good. And I've got all the snaps on this side already. You can see there's those snaps. And like I say, these rear under seat mats only ever had the single snap in the front underneath the seat, so you don't even see it, just to hold it in place so it's not sliding around. And there's the armrest. So again, once the seat's in there, you don't really see the sides, but I like to make it nice and even with the bottom. And yeah, and just snap it in place. And there you go. So we'll finish installing the snaps on the passenger mat, and then basically the seats can go in. So we're looking really good here. Okay, so just showing you how we do these snaps. There's the male, obviously, and I've just lined it up, and you can feel the male part through the carpet. So I just put the spike ring over it and recheck that it's in the right spot. Yep, and then this is my little solid thing that I can hammer against, little block. So I poke the spikes through like that, and then put this guy on top. Hang on a second. Tricky to do it with one hand. There we go. So that the spikes are showing through, And then I'm gonna hammer it down and hammer those little spikes over. Like that. Okay, and now that snaps right in place like that. Good. And this can tuck under the edge of the armor cord. And there we go. That's it. That is how the Healy 100s, well, all Healys were done with their carpet snaps. So that is done for all the mats are now installed. The armrest is installed. The interior is done with the exception of installing the seats. And of course I've got to do, this car still needs all of its cockpit rails to be installed. We're gonna have to address this rear fender beating before we can do the rear cockpit rail. I'm gonna spend some more time with this. It's just the size of tire that actually he's got there. It's not quite as tall as some are, so it's not filling the bag as much, but it is wider. So yeah, I'm just gonna have to wrestle with it to get some of the wrinkles out and get it sorted. Won't take very long, but yeah, that's looking really good. So we'll continue on by installing the seats now. Okay, and just like that, I've now installed the top frame. I had already located the holes when I installed those rear quarter panels, so really easy, just a case of lifting it in place and putting the screws in with the nuts and washers on the back side. Yeah, got to make sure you get the right size head of screw, because those are big holes, and if you don't get a large enough head, it'll just go right through, because they are larger than a lot of screws that size. I found they're 5/16, but you know, the countersink can vary, the head size can vary, I found, so you got to get big ones. Yeah, and now with the top frame in, I went ahead and installed the cockpit rails now. Yeah, beautiful. Those are the new anodized cockpit rails that we did, and they came out really nice. So yeah, really happy with that. Really sets off the look of it. And so that's just about it for the interior. So I'm going to go ahead now and install the seats, put both seats in, and then once the seats are in, we can start thinking about weather equipment. So we'll be doing the top and side screens and tonneau cover on this. So just waiting for a new wood header rail. It'll screw onto there. So yeah, that'll be next week sort of thing. So for the end of this week, I'm gonna be, yeah, like I say, installing the seats, and that'll finish off all of the interior stuff. And yeah, looking really good. Okay, beautiful. The seat is in place. I just gotta drop the cushion in now. Still have yet to put the other side in, but yeah, that's looking really good. So take a shot with the cushion in. Beauty. That's looking wonderful. So there you can see a nice proper green interior on a spruce green car. That looks wonderful. Really happy with that. Really love the contrasting colors in there, the various materials, very 50s. Yeah, just gorgeous. So we'll get the other seat in and take a couple final shots. And like that, there we have both seats installed. Wow, does that ever look good? Love that interior. So very happy with how that's turned out. Seats look great. The whole thing, the original Carvel carpet in the right shade of green, the custom dyed armor cord in the right shade of green, and of course the proper correct leather and vinyl, English Vianide, all in the right shades. That's just beautiful. So weather equipment is the final step on this. Very happy about this. I'm gonna give it a final steam to handle any minor wrinkles in that, but she's looking really good. Beautiful. Those cockpit rails came out really nice too. Proper anodizing. Lovely. Okay, so I've just installed all of the male snaps in the front scuttle. I was able to find the original holes from underneath and just used a tiny drill bit to carefully drill through by hand, and then came in from the top and widened them out to the right size. Of course, I put painter's tape over the whole area so it wasn't going to crack the paint. And I got a little bit of vacuuming still to do, but yeah, got those all in there. So now, with all the body snaps installed, and I've installed these now too, so I can now go about putting in the tonneau cover. So yeah, it's looking really good. And yeah, of course I had the windshield off for that, which is really simple. Just a two-person job. You just take these out all the way. Make sure you catch the lever that when you pull that pin out, it drops down. So I had like a towels and stuff here. Yeah, once the lever's out, you pull the pin out the other way, the lever drops down and you can lift the windshield out, one person on each side, and no problem. So I'm going to get into installing the tonneau cover, and what I do, the new tonneau cover comes with the little metal bars pre-installed. So you start by getting those in position and then pulling it up towards the center, getting the steering bag on and centering the cutout for the rear view mirror and marking and installing that front snap first. So you get a pretty even tension pulling it front to back, and then once that's in, then I usually do these corners and get all the corners done. Wow, and looking better all the time. There it is with the tonneau cover on and half open. I drive like this all the time. I love it. Just loving the two of them here. It's nice having two Healy 100s in your shop. Sisters, brothers, whatever they are, siblings. Yeah, so this is looking fantastic. Really happy with that. It fit beautifully. This is, of course, is one of my tonneaus that I offer through Right Way Heritage Trimming, and it's, you know, the proper English Everflex, and it's always hand bound, which is a unique thing a lot of people don't offer. That these all originals were hand bound. Everything was hand bound on a Healy, including the Armacord and the weather equipment. It was all, anywhere there was binding, it was done like that. Anyway, and then of course, all of my tonneaus come with the lightning zipper that I get made in the proper color with the lightning zipper pull there. Get those cast, so that's all correct and sewn in there properly. And you get a full bag of snaps for installing it. Of course, all that's available now is these style of 10X fasteners, and they were 10X, and of course these are the common sense fasteners or turn snaps. And again, this is what I will give you with a new top or tonneau, because this is all that's available now on the market, and they work just fine. They are the modern versions of these fasteners, but my car here, which is a, you know, gold level concourse, these are original old ones, and the difference being they've got that knurled head and slightly different shape head, and so they've just evolved in their style. And of course the common sense fasteners, the originals, were rounded tops, whereas the new ones are squared off. So little minor details between original and repro, but so yeah, ours are correct in every way, except you're on your own. If you want to get original fasteners, you got to try and find that stuff, which is getting very scarce these days. Yeah, I was years finding mine. So not to detract from this otherwise beautiful product here. Yeah, continuing in that vein, I will say, and I mentioned it earlier, so all of the colors and materials, everything I've used on this car are absolutely correct, accurate in every way. The one thing outstanding though is the color of this Everflex, because this is the only green Everflex you can get nowadays, and Everflex is notable because it's weatherproof. It's got this gray backing on the inside. Depending on the color, some colors have a beige backing, but regardless, yeah, and it's a stronger, durable material than the standard vinyl that is used in the Heelys. It's a different grade altogether. Yeah, but the green Everflex that is now available is this dark green, whereas in the 50s, when you got a green Heely, or a Heely with a green interior, this green shade would have been a much lighter, almost like a light olive color. It was really, really unique. And, but of course that shade of green has not been available for whatever, 40 years or something like that. So this is what we're left using. And in some cases, like I did with the Armacord here, you know, I was able to custom dye all of this to be the right shade of green that these were. So that is all correct. And like I say, I custom dyed all that. And then of course this car has original Carvel, which I won't be able to do that again. This guy got lucky. And of course this is all the correct green and proper vinyl that they used. But yeah, something like a tonneau cover and of course the top will be the same material, that is folding up and folding down and constantly getting creased and wrinkled and stretched. It's called Everflex. Dye is not going to adhere to something that goes through that kind of rigorous folding and stretching throughout its life. It's just going to start to flake off in no time. So that's not the kind of thing that we can do custom dyeing. So it's the one material on the car that we're having to make a sacrifice with. But other than that, she's accurate in every way. So next steps here, I'm just upstairs in my other part of my shop working on assembling the side screens. The way that I'm doing that is I fit the frames into the doors, and I've just been holding the side screen and making sure it centers itself on the door, but also works within the screen frame. And yeah, it's lots of back and forth checking so that it's gonna fit properly on the door and come up nice to the windshield post there and be a good fit. Okay, and now we've got the tonneau cover folded back behind the seats over the top frame. Everything fits beautifully. So what I've done now is I've just finished off this front area with scuttle seals. And how I make these actually is the early BN1s were done just like this. Later BN1s and BN2s and everything after that, they had like a properly made thing that went into there, and it was riveted with a separate piece of steel holding it in place. And it had, you know, it was a bulb seal that came around and was shaped to actually catch the water and send it out that way. It had a piece of channeling. Early BN1s low like this, it was just a piece of slightly, it's not quite a rectangle, it's slightly keystone shaped, so it's narrower at the bottom than it is at the top, but just a strip of that. And what I use to make that is the same seal as the top seal, the top header seal, which on Heely 100s is like a slightly keystone shape that has a little L off the end of it. And what I do is I just take that same seal and I cut off the L bit so that it's just the keystone shape and cut it to length. And you can see here it wraps around the corner and tucks under the cockpit rail, but it tightly traps into this channeling that the front shroud has. And I just put it in with a bit of glue. And usually from this point on, like I leave a tail that can wrap in there. And from that corner on, I'll taper out the backside of it, just either with a fresh razor blade or a belt sander or something. Just taper it out so it's thinner going around. It's not going to cause a big bunch underneath of the cockpit rail. And yeah, and it just goes long so that water hits here and just beads off into the door well. Yeah, so, and when you close this, you get a nice seal there. between the door and that. So it's, you know, not as good as the later seals, obviously, but it's a nice representation of what these early ones were. And you can just use that top seal or lengths of it. Yeah. So that's it for that. I'm going to show you the top and side screens next and carry on from there. Okay, and here we are with the side screens all properly assembled with their chromes and hardware and the frames. So again, available through Right Way Heritage Trimming. I'm the only one out there producing these style 2 side screens with the little lift up flap. So yeah, all done correctly. And if you need frames and chromes, ask. I might have a set. I've got a few, just enough for like 2 cars left. Yeah, because this stuff is not easy to find, getting the full set of cracked chromes. You can buy the later style 3, which are a little bit different. They don't have this bottom chrome, and this top chrome just comes down to here. So they're a little bit different style. The whole bottom lifts up on those instead of having a separate flap. So those are available new, but these earlier ones are not available at all. And well, except I produce them. So yeah, so preferably you've got your original hardware in that, and we can get them done properly. So yeah, here we are. They're all fit beautifully, and you can see I got a nice, it fits the door properly front to back, and it's a nice seal against the windshield there. And yeah, and they've got that little inner snap with the 10X snap to finish off on the doors there. So they're both looking really good. I had to spend some time reworking the little brackets here that go into the tops of the doors, getting the right angles and stuff like that so they sit properly. Lots of working these pieces to get them fitting properly, so all part of the process with any restoration. So with the side screens all fit as they should, the last thing on this car now is fitting the top. So oh, and I've got a nice new side screen bag that I've made for these so they can stow in the trunk. But yeah, I'm now going to remove the tonneau and get the top frame up in position. And of course I'm going to thoroughly tape and protect the top of the windscreen there where the frame meets it. And yeah, we'll get that going and get into fitting the new top that I've made. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting into fitting the top. So with the frame already installed, and I was able to loosen it off and kind of play with it, trying to, you know, there's a little bit of play just in the holes themselves for mounting the top, and just kind of get it to a sweet spot where it is falling nicely on the windshield. So yeah, a little bit of play there helped. So it's now in its erect position, obviously. This rear bow is just sitting there. It can fall down, so I've got blankets here to catch it in case. These are the webbing straps that I'll be putting in. And so with early BN1s like this, the webbing actually was not attached to the top itself until the top goes on. But some later cars like BN2s have it actually sewn into the top. Not the case on early BN1s. You can see there's a little holes, one on either side. So what happens with these webbing straps, I'm gonna glue it centered over that hole, starting it here and wrapping it around itself. So gluing it around like that and then pulling forward, and it'll be stapled off here. And then what that hole is for is after the top goes on, you find that hole through the top, which is not easy. And then there's just a chrome trim screw, like same kind of screws as we use for the trim panels, with a cup washer. Goes through from the outside right through the top on that rear seam that comes up and stops just like there. Goes right through that rear seam, through the webbing, and holds the top to that rear bow. That is the final step. I always get the top all situated, get that rear bow so it's falling right into the seam. The forward seam lines up perfectly with that, and the rear seam lines up perfectly with that. So you find where that is, pull the webbing forward and staple it all off here. And of course, you'll have the hide 'em strip covering your row of staples on the front here and finishing that. Yeah, and of course your staples are going to go along the bottom edge of this wood, trying to keep it as close as we can to that intersection, but still getting good purchase on the wood. And of course I've pre-installed the top brackets just to hold it all in place. I've got lots of tape on the windscreen, which you can't really see because it's underneath. And I've put on the 3 little chrome finishers which push against the back of the windscreen to hold it in position. So we're looking really good here. So, next step is, now that this is fit, is I'm going to remove all these chrome hardware pieces and trim this entire header rail. And it wraps all the way around the steel here, and it butt joints to itself along the bottom where the top seal is going to cover the butt joint. So it wraps all the way around both faces. So we're going to trim that header rail first, and then put back on all of these chromes, the inner ones, and reaffix it to the windscreen. And actually at that time I can actually put in the top seal too, because the top itself does not go all the way under. It stops just under here, just under the hydem. Okay, so coming right along here, I've got the header rail now trimmed in its separate piece of Everflex there. So it covers the whole thing. It's just a big long rectangle, and the joint is underneath in the crevice sort of thing where this wraps around. Yeah, and then, yeah, here we can see we've got those little chrome nubs, and you can see there's the black rubber top seal, and the top seal is glued over top of the butt join where this piece of Everflex wraps around the header rail. So that's all ready to go, and we've got those, like I say, those little chrome finishers on the inside that press against the windscreen, and they've got a little black rubber nubbin in them, which I've still got to get those. So luckily I've doubled up on the tape here, so it's nice and protected. But yeah, there's a little black half round, half sphere nubs that stick into these holes and rub against the chrome there so that it doesn't get scratched. Yeah, so, and now I've put the webbing on, so you can see I just wrap it over itself. I've got to clean up the bit of glue there, but just glues over itself and around, and I've poked through the original holes where this trim screw is going to go through. So I'll have to find that once we get the top on. I have not established this yet. I've pulled the piping up, but it will probably pull quite a bit tighter once the top goes on, and we'll get that set so that it corresponds so that both of the top seams land on these 2 bows. So that's where we're at. We've got the webbing going. I've marked my center lines. So I still got to do it on the body here. I'm always going to put some tape on the body, in between here sort of thing, and mark the center line between those 2. And then mark the center line on the top, obviously, as well. Always start with center lines when you're doing a top or tonneau. And then I've got to do the same thing here. I've got to mark the center line on the header rail there so I can line it up with the center line on the top as well and get this all done properly and centered. So we'll do that. We'll put our center lines on next. With this one, you can either mark it directly on the header rail, or I like to put some tape there and just mark it on the windshield so I can pull the top tight and line it up. So I'm gonna do that next, and then we'll offer the top onto the car. I'm just preparing the top over here. As you can see, this is one of our tops that I've made by hand, and yeah, I've cut out, sometimes I supply these with a piece of top material in here to protect the window, so I've cut that out of there. It's still got tape on the other side to peel away when it's all installed. But I've now installed the top bar. You've got to have your original top bar, and it has like a little tapers on the ends, so it just slides in from one end or the other and gets centered so that seam amount, yeah, the tips of it are right there and there. So when I offer this onto the top, the bar goes underneath of those little chrome catches here, hooks into there, and then we'll just line it up side to side so that the top itself is centered, and then pull it all forward and get our center lines established here. And you know, put just a couple staples just to hold it in position as we get it falling on this first, and then figure out where that needs to go to fill it out. Yeah, so we'll go from there. Okay, here we go. We've got the rear bar in place and it's clipped into those little things, and I've got the center line marked up with a sensor line, and I've pulled it all forward, getting this seam to line up with that bar. I mean, we'll pull the wrinkles out to the sides, but pulled it all the way forward with my center lines lining up here to my center lines here. Put a couple staples there to start, and then pulled it out tight here, pulling it again so that that's falling onto that bar, and put a couple staples here. And now these are just onto the frame. Now that these are pulled up in position, I've got these little aluminum tabs as original sewn into the top here. And if you feel with your finger, I should really start marking these, there is a big 5/16 hole near the top of it. There's a hole there, and then the tab itself kind of tapers out here, so the other hole will be in front of the tab. So one goes through the tab, one goes just in front of the tab for those two screws. So I've got to make those holes now, just making sure they do line up. Yep, and they do. I got to make those holes now through both layers. So I usually do it make this one first through the material, and then stab it through, and you'll find it's right along this bottom edge here, just big enough. I've done it already on the other side, so this is a finicky bit of work, but there you can see I've made those holes, and it falls just over the piping, and it goes right through that little metal tab. And so I'll show you on the inside here. You can see here, got the little acorn nuts there, and yeah, that goes right through the tab there. So do that to the other side. So both front corners are set in place, and that is something that basically establishes where this top goes. They're sewn to that spot. They can only go one way because you're using that hole in the aluminum tab. So once you get those in, now the rest of this, the next pieces, once I get the other side like this done, the next ones are going to be these ones, and you want to pull this down so that it's perfectly even with that door gap, so that that door is not going to hit the top. You want it right like that, and I'm going to be putting one of those little eyelet holes right in here. Now what I like to do with these is use like a white chalk pencil, a China graph or whatever, and just color in the top of that, pull this down and stick it, and it'll leave a white mark on the back, and you can just carefully cut it out. And what I usually do is use like a hole maker like these, and just do a series of holes the length of that snap to cut it out. And then yeah, and then put the two pieces in. There's that, and then the other piece on the other side, and then you bend the tabs over on the back side. Really simple. Okay, so here we go. We've got now the top basically fully installed. So boy, it was a fight. It's a very tight fitting top, but when you get it on, it's fucking perfect. So yeah, once you get that there, we put these front clips on the front like I showed you. That can be worked out with a bit of heat. But yeah, that's falling where it should there. These were very tight, but got them in place. And then I did both the turn snap and that 10X kind of at the same time on both sides. I got these screws located through the seam into that little screw like I was pointing, and then you pull this out. These are the last ones to go in, is these back ones. You pull them out as tight as you can just to get the last of the wrinkles. So yeah, looking really good. This side, I don't know why, my car has the same deal and it wrinkles a bit on this, but I haven't used any steam or heat yet, so we're gonna get the last of that out with a bit of heat, I believe. And I fit the side screen in, and oh, she looks beautiful. So yeah, last thing, so I've got that evenly pulled now and looking really good. So the last thing will be to go along with my scissors and cut nice and neat straight line all the way to like here, and then this folds up like that over itself. Once this other material is gone, it'll be a lot easier. Folds up like that, and then the hydem covers over it, and it just gets cut off underneath the hydem. So the hydem will be the last piece to go on. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go over this with a heat gun now. I gotta polish the back window. Like, I've pulled all that tape off, and you can see it's left some residue. So I'm gonna polish that all out, get it looking really good. I'm gonna work on this a little bit and get that a little better. I think if I just pull that way, it should be all right. So take out those staples and do a bit of fine adjustment. But yeah, that's looking really good. I'm gonna fit this side screen as well, get that looking nice. And I'll show you the finished product. Okay, and there we are, the finished top and side screens. I've got the hydem strip on there, nicely finished. Oh, I gotta wipe away my center line there. It's just a little bit of water on the cloth. Easy, but that is looking beautiful, nice and tight like we like them. Yeah, just gorgeous. Again, these tops are available from me at Right Way Heritage Trimming, and same with the side screens and tonneau cover and everything you saw in this video. All of these interior components are things I produce, and they are Concourse accurate. Yeah, perfect fit, exactly like the factory did them, correct materials, everything. So hit me up if you're looking for a new interior for your Austin Healey. Yeah, love doing this. Really glad to get this car finished for Lanny. It's been, like I say, 50 years in the making, this restoration. So really hoping he's gonna be able to get out and enjoy it, and drive it, and yeah, use it like it was meant to be. So I'm gonna now roll this out into the sun and let the sun hit this for the rest of the afternoon, and hopefully soften it up and get it happy in its position, which I recommend for any new top. And you know, also I always advise my clients with a new top, always put the top up for any amount of long storage. So for winter storage, etc. like that, you want to put the top up. The more you keep your top up, the longer it's going to last, and be able to go up and down. The more you keep it down and don't use it, the more it's going to shrink and not be as flexible and stretchy. So yeah, always recommend putting the top up for any amount of storage time. It just helps the longevity and keeps your Everflex flexing. Well, that's it. So I'm going to call it a video here. Again, until next time, my name is Jeff Chrysler of Right Way Heritage Trimming and a detail enthusiast. We'll see you again. Take care.